All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Apologize about last week. So, hope everybody had a good couple of weeks. This is our fourth class. Can you hear me? I feel like we're in the.
Yes.
Sometimes I feel like we're in the ice age over here, like everything is frozen. Nobody's talking.
We can hear you.
All right. All right. All right. We are in part two of color and culture, if you wish. This is white collar, blue collar. And what we are going to do today is talk a little bit of history, but more so about halacha. So we want to talk a little bit about Mesorah, the tradition of clothing in Jewish culture and Jewish law. And we want to talk a little bit about some of the actual laws when it comes to how a Jew is supposed to dress. Last week, we went through a lot of fascinating folklore, if you wish, some beautiful, beautiful thoughts from different great masters. And we went through a lot of different takes on how a Jew is supposed to dress and how a Jew is supposed to show up in the world. But today, we're going to talk a little bit more law, as I mentioned last time. I want to begin with a story that when you first read this story or hear about it, it doesn't seem like it has anything to do with how we dress in Judaism, but it actually makes for a very good story. The Chabad dynasty is one of 7 rebbes. So the first of the Hasidic masters was Reb Shner Zalman of Liadi. That's number 1. When you go down the line, moving from the late 1700s down to 2004, where we have the passing of the most recent Lubavitch Rebbe, he is number 7. Before the Rebbe became the Rebbe of Chabad Lubavitch, he was the son-in-law of the previous Rebbe. Before he lived in America, he lived in Ukraine, he lived in Warsaw, he lived in France, he lived in Berlin, he lived in numerous different cities until he made his way to America in 1940. In his time in Europe, he spent time studying, researching in university, and leading world Jewry with his father-in-law. There's a story told that he once met with the great Rebbe of the Belzer Hasidic dynasty. He was known as the Belzerov. a very great Hasidic master. So this was in the early 1900s. The Rebbe came to a town where the Rebbe was, and he was greeting Jews, and he was shaking hands, greeting the Jews as he met them. He used to wear a handkerchief over his hand when he would shake people's hands, or at least at this event he did. And one of the people that came to greet him was the most recent Chabad Rebbe, Rebbe Menachem Mendel Schneerson of Lubavitch, known as the Rebbe. When he shook the Rebbe's hand, he was he had a challenge with his eyesight at the time. And he had a gabbai, he had a secretary that sat with him. And he asked the gabbai, who is this? Erhot varm mehent, he said in Yiddish. He has warm hands. So, often someone is coming out of the cold and you're inside. So when you're going to shake their hand, they're going to tell you, oh, he has such warm hands. Like, give me your hands. My hands are freezing. But in Yiddish, when you use such a phraseology, what you mean to say is like there's something special about this man. Erhot varm mehent, he has warm hands. At that time, the Rebbe called him over. He told his secretary, I need to talk to this man. And they spoke, and no one knows what they spoke. And they sat for a while and they spoke. At that time, the Lubavitcher Rebbe did not wear a long black robe like many of the Hasidic Rebbes or Hasidic Jews do today. And he would wear suits, gray suits. You see pictures of the Lubavitcher Rebbe pre-1950. You see him wearing all sorts of cool suits, mostly double-breasted, but also single-breasted suits. You see, he wore a really beautiful array of what we would consider modern clothing. And you have to remember, the Rebbe was a rabbi in Lubavitch. He was the son-in-law of the previous Rebbe. He was a master Torah scholar at a very young age. And yet he dressed like this. But he had varm mehent. It's a very Hasidic thought, but I think it's a great thought to begin this conversation. What does it mean, varm mehent? What does it mean, warm hands? A person who is warm-hearted, or a person who is good, or a person who is righteous, is not necessarily defined by the clothing that they wear. Everyone knows this. A person is good by the things they think, by the things they do, and by the things they say. So in terminologies that we're familiar with, machshava, dibur, and maisa. A person thinks proper thoughts, he speaks proper words, and he does proper action. That's a good Jew. When a person is considered a very kind Jew, because he's caring, compassionate, and loving, or a person is considered a very warm Jew, equally so. You could be a bubby, you could be a grandma, sitting in your apron giving out chocolate chip cookies, and you could be a better Jew than some of the rabbis that are sitting in Torah study halls, right? We know this. So how much does clothing have an effect on a person? The answer is varm mehent, which is, what does the clothing make you do? In the yeshiva system, scholarly students, right? Students that go to yeshiva today have a system. What's the system? The system is that they wear black and white. Many Hasidic Jews, many yeshiva Jews, non-Hasidic Jews, Lithuanian Jews, non-Lithuanian Jews, will require a decorum, if you wish, a uniform. And the uniform is that we wear black and white. Why do we wear black and white? Before 1994, if you walked into an average school in the Chabad circles, no one wore black and white. Fact. I was there, I know. In high school, in the early 90s, there was no such thing as black and white. Everybody wore a certain conservative colored blue shirt, gray shirt, white with stripes. After the Rebbe passed away, it became custom. Similarly, in the old country, people wore boots, people wore fur hats. The Lubavitcher Rebbe's father-in-law wore a fur hat. The Rebbe wore a fedora. He wore a borsalino. So how do you go from a fur hat in Russia or parts of Europe to a beautiful, slick borsalino like Frank Sinatra in America? And the answer is culture. according to Jewish law, when the person prays, he is supposed to wear a hat and a jacket. It doesn't say if it could be a baseball cap, a fur hat, or a fedora. It just says kisiroish, a second covering on my head, a kova, a hat, and a jacket. Because how are you supposed to come before a king? That's how you should pray. A hat and a jacket are quantified and classified as the type of clothing you would come to when you greet a king. Wear proper, elegant clothing. You want to wear a suit and not just a blazer? By all means. You want to wear something fancier because you're coming to visit the king, your Shabbos clothing? By all means. But the minimal on the scale is a hat and jacket. It doesn't say a long black robe. All right. What I want to portray for you here is the idea that there is law and there is culture. Law says you need to wear X type of clothing. And it's true. There is a code of Jewish law for clothing. We'll go through some of it. But there's also culture, which says law doesn't dictate, law doesn't require me to wear a long black robe and a fur hat, but the tradition, the Messiah of the Hasidic circle, the yeshiva system, the study hall, that neighborhood, the Messiah had an effect on the way Jews dressed. In fact, Talmudically and throughout Jewish history, we find that it changed. Sometimes it was black, sometimes it was white, sometimes it was black and white. Some years colors were banned, like red. The Talmud talks about red being a color you want to stay away from. In other places, different colors. If you go back to Jerusalem 100 years ago, maybe they didn't have different colors because the Hasidic Jews of Jerusalem wore brown and gold. In fact, if you go to Jerusalem today, as I mentioned this last week, we have many Jews, Hasidic Jews, a very high caliber Jews. They wear brown robes on Shabbos. If you walk into a Hasidic shul with brown shoes today, they'll be like, what happened? You just got off the train? There was a delay? Shabbos, you wear black shoes, right? If a woman who's dressing modest walked into a shul on Shabbos or Yom Tif with a pair of pants when she's supposed to be wearing a dress or a skirt, it would be pretty weird, no? Stand by. My charger is broken. Not working.
Not working?
The other one wasn't even working. Right. Try again. So, what happens with Jewish law is that often it gets contributed to, like a big river gets contributaries from little rivers and streams. The law gets contributed to by tradition and culture. And so, if you go into Williamsburg in New York, you'll see long black robes and blue robes. Then they have three-quarter coats. But if you walk in with a single-breasted suit and brown shoes in Williamsburg, they'll say, oh, this guy just came from Crown Heights. He just came from Queens. He came from Florida. This is not one of us. You can say right away, it's not one of us. Meaning, in simple English terms, he's out of uniform. So I want to set the pace for tonight's class in saying a lot of what's become Jewish culture with clothing is a matter of uniform. And I jokingly say, everyone has multiple uniforms. How do I know? Ask Matthew. Annalyn, I don't get to see you. Ariel, I don't get to see you, but I'm sure you're wearing something. I hope at least. And you're probably wearing a uniform of where you are. So if you're on your couch, you may be wearing your pajamas. If you're at work, maybe you're wearing work clothing, right? Matthew here looks like he just came out of work. So Matthew is wearing his white shirt and tie, right? I'm wearing my tie because I just came back from work as well. And I'm working right now, right? I'm wearing a sweater instead of my jacket because it's more comfortable. But that's what it is. Uniform became the culture of the law. So where law dictated certain things, culture contributed. And that's how I'm going to say it. Different times in Jewish history, different places in Jewish history, and today, different cultures within different movements have contributed to A, what is the uniform, and B, what is the law. So when we talk about law of uniform, it depends. I was in the United States Air Force. In the Air Force, we had uniforms. You had camo, it was called OCP. And then you had the blues, the suits that we wore. If you were going to a grandiose dinner, you wore dinner attire, which they have very little of these days, but that's what it was. So you had to buy a different uniform for different events. All right. Then you had a fourth uniform, which was what you would wear when you go to physical training, when you go to do exercise. Over there, you wore either certain types of pants or certain types of shirts, and there's certain required certain types of t-shirts, certain types of clothing, and you had to wear those uniforms. So if you ask, what is the uniform of the military? The answer is it depends. What are you doing? Where are you? Are you in the Army? Are you in the Navy? The OCP of the Air Force was different than the OCP of the Navy. The blues in the Air Force are the whites in the Navy. Right? They wear their white uniforms. I don't know how they do that. And it probably costs them a fortune because you get a stain on that and you're doomed. But all right, so let it be. So you see, what it used to be maybe something very simple like one or two uniforms in the military became numerous uniforms in the military. So what was once law was enhanced, advanced, and changed by culture, environment, circumstances. And that is, in a nutshell, what happened with Jewish clothing. Now, the question then is, so am I a better or a worser Jew if I wear a different uniform? That's the question. If I'm a God-fearing Jew and I wear blue collar and I don't wear white collar, am I less of a Jew than the guy that wears the white collar? And if I wear the white collar, am I a better Jew than the guy that wears the blue collar? It's a real question. And the answer is, it depends. If what you are wearing represents who you are as a uniform and you match the uniform, that's fantastic. If you are wearing something that's maybe out of uniform, maybe you walked into Williamsburg in your blue suit with your gray tie and you're very handsome for Crown Heights, but you're not very rabbinical looking for Williamsburg, you'd be out of place. Does that make you a bad Jew? No. Why? Because where you come from, that's normal culture. Just in Williamsburg, that's not the normal culture. No one's saying you have to act like Williamsburg when in Williamsburg, but Williamsburg people are going to look at you differently. Because when in Williamsburg, dress like a Williamsburger. Get what I'm saying? So, if you walk into a yeshiva, if you walk into a scholarly place where the uniform and custom is to be respected, where they wear black and white, if you're not going to be like that, you're going to be the odd one out. So it's not so much a question of law or status, because you could be just as holy and spiritual as them. It's, do you fit in because you look different? And the answer is no. So do you want to fit in? I would think so. So if you're in a place like an average Chabad shul where no one cares what you wear, right? You could come and wear whatever you like because that's just the code. That's fine. But if you're going to go to a place where the code is not so fine, like you see very often politicians, they wear kippas, they go, these people that are not necessarily Jewish, and they walk into these synagogues and they wear a kippah. The guy's a Catholic and he's wearing a yarmulke. It's funny. But what are they trying to do? They're trying to respect the space. So is there a point to that? Yeah, sure is. I think when it comes to us, it's the same thing. In your home, in your shower, and in your sauna, and in your bath, you'll wear your bodysuit. And when you're in your pajamas, in your bed, you wear your pajama suit. And when you're going to work, you're going to wear your work suit. And when you're going to the gym, you're going to wear your gym suit. Beautiful. So what does it work out to be? That it depends where you are and what you're doing. I always say every great rabbi that has a fur hat and wears a long black robe also has a pair of flannel pajamas. Most people don't think of it like this, but that's the truth. So why aren't they wearing their flannel pajamas in the study hall? And the answer is because in the study hall, what is the custom, what is the uniform, is the black and white. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, before he became Rebbe in 1951, was not a Rebbe. He was a great tzaddik before he was a Rebbe. He had varim ahent. He had warm hands that a great tzaddik could detect this man is a holy man wearing a gray suit. So the gray suit or the black suit doesn't make the man, but the clothing that you wear could make the decorum of the place. And if in a certain place the custom is we dress like this, then get on board. This idea of clothing being law, but clothing also being tradition, and tradition of time and place contributing to law is a very, very real reality for Jews. And if a Jew wears blue or a Jew wears white, ultimately makes no difference. The only difference that it makes is what are you doing in the white and what are you doing in the blue? And are you respecting the traditions of places where you may go and live? And that's it. If you live in the boondocks and you're living like a godly Jew wearing blue, so let it be. But if you're not living in the boondocks, you're living in a mainstream place, and the respected garb of that place is the custom is a certain way, then so shall it be. And if the custom is you could either wear your blues or you could wear your greens, your OCP or your camo, and either way is fine, then that's fine. But if it's not fine, then it's not fine. So in a certain way, we could say that the cross of culture of clothing and the law of clothing depends. And it's not if it depends, or maybe it depends. It surely depends. Why? Because there are many great rabbis in the world that have blue shirts and purple ties. And there are many great rabbis in the world that wear long black coats and white shirts. And many of the rabbis in the purple shirts and the pink ties could be more righteous than some of the rabbis in the long black coats and white shirts. So what are you going to say? The clothing guarantees the person? Absolutely not. Is it a uniform? Absolutely is. And I want to sum this up in one word. The word in Hebrew is beged. The word for clothing in Hebrew is beged. You know what, by the way? It's Beis Gimel Dalet, like in Hebrew, Aleph, Beis Gimel Dalet. That's right. Aleph is Hashem. Beis Gimel Dalet. An easy way to remember this whole conversation. 2, 3, 4 is clothing. Beged, Beis, Gimel, Daled. But you know what the word beged also means? Boged. You know what a boged is? An adversary, an enemy. Your beged could bring out the best in you, and your beged could make you the biggest fraud ever. Your beged could be your boged, that which is against you. You could put on a black robe, and you could wear a beautiful fur hat. And what does it mean? And you could wear jeans and a t-shirt, and you could be the best Jew. Am I saying that's the best Jewish clothing? No. Scholars wear black and white. Yeshivas wear black and white. Rabbis wear black and white very often. Certain communities, that's the way they dress, with long black and white, with fur hats, not just borsalinos. It's clear that in some places that's the decorum. But that same beged that could make you look like a Hasidic or pious or good Jew could also be a forgery. You put on this long robe, you wear this big fur hat, and at the end of the day, how do you behave? You rob, you steal, you lie, you cheat. Take it off. Don't disgrace the robe. Don't disgrace the garb. Don't disgrace the custom. Don't disgrace the law. You're putting on this garment, but really you're a fraudster. You're a boged. You're not a beged. You're a boged. You're an enemy. You're an adversary. You're putting on these fancy clothing. You make us think that you're this holy Jew. And meanwhile, what are you? And in fact, there's a Talmud in Kiddushin, Tractate Kiddushin, page 40, where the Talmud actually says this whole conversation is spoken about how clothing could protect you from sin and how clothing could lead you to sin. Why? Because I'm the righteous one. You see, I'm the Pope. And if I'm the Pope, I can't sin. Oh, yeah? You sure can. Why? Precisely because of the garment that you wear. Precisely because you're protected and no one sees and no one knows. And look what I'm wearing. So I'm very holy. All right. I think we've shared a fair amount of seeing it from two different perspectives and understanding where tradition and law coincide, where in the word itself and the philology of the concept, we understand this as well. Beged versus boged. Clothing could be your best friend. Clothing could be your worst enemy because it could deny the truth behind who we really are. I apologize. I have a very bad cold. In fact, my voice is annoying me, so I can only imagine what it's doing for you, but we'll do my best. Did you? One moment.
I hope you feel better soon, Rabbi.
Thank you very much. Well, anybody who needs a complete and speedy recovery should have one as well. Is it working for you? Oh, it's plugged out.
Why is it working when
It's plugged out.
just started charging?
Maybe it had a little electric in it. I don't know. All right. Let's underline a few terms. Very strange. I need to reset my phone. There is a word in Hebrew called snius, sniut. Have either of you, any of you here, have any conversations in your preparatory classes to convert about this concept called sniut from the women's section here? Anyone?
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about what you learned with regards to sniut?
Just the different types of clothing and like the lengths that it should be and what it should cover.
Okay, so tell me.
So collarbones should be covered, elbows, dresses and skirts to the knees or past the knees. Some people do closed-toed shoes, or if you have open-toed shoes, to have socks on. If you're married, to cover your hair either with a sheitel or a tichel. Some people have the custom at home, if your husband is davening, to just always wear your tichel.
Excellent. Anything else?
If I think of anything else, I'll let you know.
Amazing. Katie, what about you?
Some things that I understand. Well, you're looking like for more specifics, like some of the
Mhm.
examples that Ariella gave.
Yeah.
There's a difference with like some like Shabbat attire, also something in Sneas. I'm curious, or the notion of shaving your head, and there's an element to that also.
Who
For-
can and who can't shave their head? What do you mean?
For women who are wearing wigs. That's a good question. I don't know the answer of who can and who cannot.
Oh, interesting. So in Williamsburg, actually, they make their women shave their heads. You know that?
Yeah.
Very traumatic experience for someone that did not grow up in that culture.
Mhm.
But for those that did, and in Jerusalem and some other neighborhoods in the world, it's normal.
Right, like B'nai Brak and other, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So I actually chose 15 different things to touch on, and we'll do a little speed reading here.
Wait, may I also ask a question? Because I was
Sure.
also reading something in a book recently about the color red,
Yeah.
and for women, and like an element of it being forbidden to wear. And I don't
It
know if
is frowned upon,
hmm
but many religious women do wear red. But in many religious circles, red is frowned upon for one simple reason. Does red bring us to modesty and divine awareness, or does red bring us to other things?
I don't have an answer, but then I'm always
I do. I do. I have a
Oh,
great answer.
well, you'll
Every
give an
woman looks great in a red dress, does she
answer.
not?
Yeah.
All women, when they want to look, I'll just say it in simple American English, they want to look hot. How do they want to dress? A hot red dress, right? And every guy wants a hot red Corvette and a hot red Ferrari and a hot red Lamborghini and a Bugatti. Why?
Well, it gets if you get pulled over, the insurance rate is higher for red cars. So I guess also for red clothing, it's actually true.
Right?
But
I
then
don't know.
what
Why is Kmart in red?
mm,
Right? Why
but
are
then
so many companies in red? Red
Red so
stands out.
interesting. But
Huh?
In Israel, it's forbid. When I lived and taught English in Israel, we weren't allowed to correct papers in red.
Wow.
But then I also have a question. You'll go to it because Kabbalah,
Sure.
a lot of like, when you wear a Kabbalah bracelet, then there's also
Yeah.
the element of
Yeah.
red there.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
curious for you to tie that in.
Yeah, very good. And in Hasidus and Kabbalah, you will find that red and white represent Malchut, which is kingdom, and red is a very highly sought after color. The question is for who and where. For example, in many synagogues, red is prevalent. Many table covers and curtains by the Torah scroll are in red, and many prayer books and chumashim are in red, right? The Rebbe's chair was red. So in a holy space, in a spiritual environment, red has its place. For a man and a woman, red is frowned upon. Now, am I going to tell you, Katie, that red is halachically Jewish law prohibited? Debatable. Many religious Jews wear red. Many rabbis wear red ties. Good religious rabbis wear red ties. Is it frowned upon in many neighborhoods? Yes. And why? 2,500-year-old conversation. In many places, red was looked upon as a color of promiscuity. If you want to come up with maybe a neighborhood and make the Jewish garb red, maybe we could win it back. Otherwise, we're up a cliff on this one.
It's also funny though, because if you like Sephardic Jews, especially on Shabbat, you often see them like very colorful.
Yeah, this is very, very true. Kabbalah Center, not that they're an example of Judaism, but they are a part of Judaism. They wear white.
hmm
And Hasidic Judaism says, white? What are you, an angel? On Yom Kippur, we wear white. By the Passover Seder, some people wear white, but an average Shabbat to wear white? That's weird. Black and white? Now that's a cookie. But just white alone? That's pretentious. You see how crazy this gets? Why I even make this a conversation in Jewish law? But it is. It really is. But barely anyone ever talks about it. Why? Because it's like, okay, just wear what everybody wears. No, what do you mean? I want to wear jeans and a t-shirt. I want to wear a red t-shirt. I want to wear a red dress. I want to wear a red tie. Okay, so can you? I don't know. Can you? The answer is halachically yes. Culturally, maybe not. So which one rules, the culture or the halacha? The answer is both, because I just showed you that tradition, culture, contributes in many ways in this context of this conversation to the law. So we said, coming back to the woman conversation, hair covering, check. Modesty, check. What about a man? Does a man have to wear a head covering? Yes. In fact, sorry, ladies, but you're not the only one that has to keep your hair covered when you're married. Men have to keep their head covered always, even when they're not married. Now, not exactly the way a woman does, because the woman has to cover her hair entirely when she's married, but he has to wear a kippah, a yarmulke. Now, let me ask you, does it have to be black? Same thing as the culture that we've been talking until now. It's common that in yeshivas and in most reputable institutions of higher learning, and in most communities where you stand by a certain culture, you wear black. But if you go into any Judaic store today in the world, you will find kippahs in every single color. In fact, come to my closet and you will see a box of a few different colors as well. I probably gave most of the other colors away. But over the years, I mean, I have pictures of me when I was a kid. My mom got me plaid kippahs. I'm not sure where she got them from. Argyle kippahs, green, blue, brown, you name it, white. Today, moms and dads all across the religious world, they want to send their kids to the matching shoes, shorts, pants, jacket, tie, and kippah. It all has to match, right? So the kippah companies went out and they said, let's keep moms happy. And they made every color kippah. Is that allowed? Yes. Are you going to say that's the higher level, the highest level of kippah wearing performance? Now you're crossing over into culture. You're crossing over into uniform world. Children don't have a uniform. Adults do. Rabbis may. Communities may. If you walk in with a brown kippah to Lakewood, to Monroe, New York, or to Kiryas Yol, upstate New York, and you come in with the brown kippah, you'll be kicked out of the school system and shipped back to Timbuktu. You're not accepted here. You can't dress like that, right? So it's cultural. All right. Men have to cover their heads. That's the halacha in Shulchan Aruch. Jewish men are required to keep their heads covered as an expression of Yirat Shemayim. In fact, the kippah is called Yarei Malka. That's where we get the word Yamulka. It's a compound word of fear of God, fear of the king. So blue collar, white collar, a kippah, a man has to wear. A woman has to cover her hair if she's married. Woman, modest dress for a woman. So, like you mentioned before, a woman must cover her upper arms, her thighs to the knees, the neckline, shoulder blade areas in front of men, right? Can a woman then go to the beach? She sure can. Can she go to a pool? She sure can. When? Halachically speaking, the woman can go whenever she wants. Can a man go then when the woman is there? Questionable. In halacha, classic halacha, no. Why? Because a man is not supposed to see any other woman than his wife dressed immodestly. So can a woman be immodest by a pool or a body of water, a river, a lake, an ocean? Absolutely. Why? Because that's a Beis HaMerchetz. That's a place where people are found in that uniform. Hello?
Now I can hear you.
Did I lose you?
Yes.
I lost you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you, Rabbi.
Stand by. Phone speaker. All right. Can you hear me now? All right. If a person goes out to war, does he have to wear a kippah? Yes. Does he have to wear tzitzis? Yes. Why? Because Torah requires a certain sense of dignity, even in extenuating circumstances. Right? If a woman is being buried, do we cover her hair when she gets buried? Good question. I'm leaving this one for homework. A Jew's conduct should always reflect the awareness of God's presence. So I ask, does your clothing bring you closer to God and give you a greater sense of divine awareness? Or does your clothing give you a lower sense of awareness of God? And that answers the question. The theory is that if we wear the uniform, and very often it's true, we will act like the uniform we wear. So if we wear a more godly uniform, which by God, it's godly because it ain't no Levi's jeans and a Gap t-shirt. You're wearing a black jacket with black pants and a white shirt and a black tie. Houston, are you a yuppie? No, you're a Jubie. So therefore, you're going to act like it. We hope. So if you wear the uniform, we're hoping you'll have a greater sense of divine awareness, just like when you wear a kippah. I promise you, most Jews, statistically, will do less sins in the wrong places wearing a yarmulke and a kippah than if they didn't wear a yarmulke and a kippah. Fact. If you take that kippah off and you take that tzitzis off, right? What happens? I can get away with it. Put on my baseball cap. I'll put on my Led Zeppelin t-shirt. I'll put on my raggedy jeans. I'll put on my favorite Air Jordans, or I don't know, some other flip-flop. I'll go out to the bar, and I'm going to tell them I'm from Williamsburg, the other side. I'm going to tell them from Hippieville, from the other side, from Tel Aviv. I'm not from, I got a beard? Lots of people have beards. I play baseball. I have a beard. And that's it. But if you're wearing your garments, remember, like we spoke last week, your Kohanic vestments, most likely you're going to behave different. So the beged is not going to be boged. The garment is not going to fail you. It's going to serve you. The uniform is going to make you behave like a soldier, to bring you a greater sense of divine awareness. So modesty is a law. Hair covering is a law. Wearing a kippah is a law. But why? Dignity, modesty, and divine awareness. All right. So a Jew, a man, wears a kippah wherever he goes. He must wear a kippah when he says a blessing. Must wear a kippah when he prays. Must wear a kippah when he benches after eating or before eating, makes a bracha. Keep going. Any mitzvah that's being done, he has to wear a kippah. You'll notice when Chabad people go around, and they say, hey, are you Jewish? Yeah, you want to put on tefillin? Yeah. First thing they're going to do, they're going to take a kippah and put it on their head. Why? Because now you're making a blessing. Now you're doing a mitzvah. You do a mitzvah, got to put on the uniform, or at least part of it. You know, there's a story told of the Rebbe, this same Rebbe with the varim hand, this warm-handed man in his gray suit. He once had a Jew who came to him and said, Rebbe, I'm a little upset with you. He said, why? He said, Rebbe, you know, every day I see you on the street and you always go like this to me. You know, you like give me a little, like a boigen, like a little bow. Whenever you see me, and I always feel good, like the Rebbe's acknowledging me, walking through the streets of Crown Heights. But the other day I saw the postman, and by the postman you took your hat and you lifted your hat up to the postman. How come the Rebbe never lifts his hat to me? It's a great story, by the way, validated from inside sources. And the Rebbe said, it's interesting you say this. In the secular culture, when you come inside, you take off your hat. When you want to show respect to someone, you take off your hat, like, you know, hats off to you, as we say in simple English. In fact, in the military, when you wear your hat outside, you come inside, you have to take your hat off. That's a sign of decorum. That's the uniform. The Rebbe said, in the Jewish world, it's just the opposite. You put your hat on when you want to show respect. He said to the mailman who's not Jewish, I lifted up my hat off. But to you, the Jew, I'm going to leave my hat on and I'm going to give you a little bow. This is an ironclad approach. You see how the Rebbe himself joined the idea of tradition and law hand in hand. The bow of the head to the Jew versus the hats off to the non-Jew. The Rebbe knew the code of conduct. In one of our trainings in the Air Force, they give out these sheets. And one of the sheets, if you're going off to a different country, they give you a cheat sheet of behavior in that country. So, for example, when you go to Japan, know the following facts. So here what it says on the cheat sheet. It's a long cheat sheet. It's got a bunch of facts. One of the facts are as follows. Just listen. Let's give you one. When you greet someone in Japan, never shake their hand. Why? If you shake their hand, it's a callous, cold way of greeting them. It's like handshake. It's like cold. It's professional. It's like businesslike. But if you really want to show respect to someone, you go like this. You see how that works? In America, the first thing you do, handshake. Oh, good morning, sir. Good afternoon. How are you? Yeah, handshake. Ah, can a Jew shake a hand? It's a whole question in Jewish law. Modesty, a man to a woman. If it's affection, if it's not affection, joy, not joy, attention, not attention. All these questions in Jewish law about touching a man or a woman. Comes along Japanese law, Japanese culture, and what does it say? Shake a hand? See how that works? See how that works? What's simple to us is the absolute opposite to somebody else. You're thinking, I'm a cool Jew in my jeans on my t-shirt. Even though I'm wearing my jeans, even though I'm wearing my t-shirt, I'm still a Jew. 100%. But let me ask you a question. Is that the culture? Is that the uniform? Is that giving you the greatest level of divine awareness? The Rebbe to the mailman was different to the Rebbe the Chassid, right? The handshake in America versus the bow in Japan. Now think back, right? What do I wear? What's in my closet? Do I look like a Jew? Would they know I was a Jew walking on the street? And if the answer is yes, good. If the answer is no, there's a question. Why? Why are you not recognizable as a Jew on the street? If you walked into a synagogue and someone pulled out a Torah scroll, would you confuse it for anything else other than a Torah scroll? No. If a Jew walks on the street, should the Jew not be recognized as a Jew? You ever notice the Torah scroll is black on white? Now you want to know maybe why people in the higher echelons of Jewish society wear black and white? They want to look like a Torah scroll. Make no mistake about it. I am black and white, just like my Torah. Now, why don't women do that? Not the culture, not the law. But many men, and throughout Jewish history, how this evolved, black and white was the thing. I'm not going to say that the code of Jewish law says you have to wear black and white. It absolutely does not. But since culture and tradition change through history and time and places, that contributes back to the law. That means that became now the law of this and this place because tradition contributed to the law. All right. A kippah, minimum. Tzitzis, minimum. Many Jews for all of Jewish history had beards. Men had beards. It's a modern invention or a periodic deviation of time throughout history where people wore no beards. Payas was short. But throughout Jewish history, collectively, since Sinai, the beard was sacred. If the beard was removed, there was a good reason. That's clothing. That's part of how you look, part of how you show up. Tying shoes. The Torah in Shulchan Aruch says the left takes precedence for men. So you put your tefillin on first on your left hand with your right hand. So you put your tefillin on your left, but how do you wrap the tefillin? With your right hand. Right takes precedence. In Jewish law and in Kabbalah, we want the right garment to override the left garment. If you go into Williamsburg, the buttons on the shirt are like for women. The buttons are on the left side and the holes are on the right side. So the hole goes over the button. We wear shirts the opposite. Many Hasidic Jews purposely make their shirts and jackets and coats right over left. Why? Halachic concept. Yamin, right, is positive energy. Left is lesser positive energy. I want the higher positive energy to override the lesser, lower level of energy. So I want right over left. Wow, who would imagine? Yeah. Min comes first in mitzvahs, the right. The mezuzah on the door. Is it on your left side or on your right side? On your right side coming in. That's where your mezuzah goes. Right comes first. Tefillin get put on with your right hand. If you make a bracha, you pick some food up and you want to make a bracha in your right hand. You want to give tzedakah with your right hand. Right has precedence. That influenced the design of clothing throughout Jewish history. The Rebbe talked about this quite a bit, how wearing clothing right over left could be a source of great blessing in a person's life. Am I allowed to wear clothing that's left over right? Yes. Is it a higher level of performance if I wear right over left? Yes. Rabbi Hecht, what do? Some of my clothing is left over right. What can I do? Little Yankee Doodle after all. And a lot of my clothing is right over left. Moving on. Talking about clothing and law, shatnas. Did you ever learn about that? Matthew, did you learn about the mixture of different materials in garments? No. Interesting. All right. So garments containing a mixture of wool and linen are forbidden. Yeah. Who knew? A biblical prohibition. Can't hear you, Matthew. Am I going deaf here? Matthew, can't hear you. I know I have an ear infection, but I don't know if it's that bad. Matthew, I think your dog ate the mic. I lost him. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it that way. I take it back.
You're funny, Rabbi.
That's what they say. I get to keep my job because of that. It's a cover up. I tell you, it's a cover up. Because I'm really a lot funnier. All right, moving on. We talk about mixture of wool and linen. In Jewish law, we have a few minutes left. Many suits. Ah, there you are. Matthew?
Are you able to hear me now?
Ah, I could hear you now with 5 bars.
Yes, I do. I am somewhat familiar with shatnez.
Okay.
I was just
It's
saying that,
it's a biblical mitzvah, yeah.
yeah. I was listening to something recently about shatnez and the tzitzis. That there is you can mix if it's
Yes.
if it's not a permanent knot.
Right. Very interesting conversation. Tzitzis may be the only garment that could have an exception. And maybe also in the temple, there were certain exceptions. But otherwise, if you buy a suit, you have to check it for shatnez or buy it from a seller that you know that the manufacturer does not put linen in the collars.
Yeah.
Who would imagine Jewish law is dictating what my suits could be made out of? And why in the world does it bother God if wool and linen are in the same garment? Come on, man. Seriously, my hammock is made with wicker and wood. So what? You know what I mean? Like, seriously. And I got polyester tablecloths and wool tablecloths and cotton tablecloths. Why can't I have it in the same material? It's an interesting mitzvah. It goes under the category of a chok, which means it's not a rational mitzvah, although it has Kabbalistic meaning behind it. It's not, but that's the law. Another halacha when it comes to clothing, when we talk about law, not so much tradition, cross-dressing. Matthew, if you want to wear a dress, and you may look good in a dress, and maybe you're Scottish, and you look real mighty fine in your little plaid dress over there with your little bag of pipe. But are you allowed to cross-dress? In Scotland, you can cross-dress all you want. But in New York, we don't wear skirts. We wear pants, And therefore, if you wore a skirt in New York, I'm going to have to ask you to step outside. Why? It's a biblical prohibition. It's a disgrace. That's totally off. That's walking in to the yeshiva in your pajamas. Men and women may not wear clothing exclusively identified with the opposite gender. It's a biblical prohibition. By the way, the question is, what about women wearing pants? And this is one of the most heated conversations of the last 100 years. Why? Some women look more modest in pants than, let's just say, those skanky little skirts, right? So how could it be that pants could be immodest? And that's where I'm going to tell you, what did I tell you? Tradition feeds law. And if tradition made it that pants are unaccepted, pants are unaccepted. That means it could very well be that in Jewish law, pants are modest, especially those big baggy ones. Now they have what's called skirt pants. I don't know what they call them. The ones that are like half skirts and half pants, skirts, shorts, smorts, forts. I don't know what they call them. Yeah. And what happens? They're more modest than some of the skirts people wear. Comes along Jewish law, comes along Jewish tradition and culture and says, Bubala, I know it's good somewhere, not here. If that's the culture and that's the law, it doesn't work. I remember once, a few years ago, a man comes up to me. He says, Rabbi, I have to tell you something really important. Remember, I'm a rabbi in the Chabad house. He's like, yeah, what? He's like, there's a woman on the other side of the mechitza. She's wearing pants. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, she's wearing pants. I'm like, what? He's like, what do you mean what? I'm like, what are you talking about? Why are you looking about the woman on the other side of the mechitza and what she's wearing? Right? I said, this is a Chabad house. We welcome everyone. Down the block, they don't. Here we do. It's a different structure. Down the block, if a woman walked in with pants, they'd ask her to step outside. But in this shul, we're not asking you what you wear. Dress basically modest and step on inside. We'll take it from there. Culture is going to be now dictated by law. Law says that you have to dress modest. Culture will say, and in Chabad house, we're going to hold that law. We're going to educate them, and then we'll teach them how to be modest. But for right now, we allow them in. See, it goes the other way as well. Sometimes culture influences law, and sometimes law influences culture. And sometimes culture, which is the spiritual approach to outreach, will influence law. In other words, take it slowly. Educate the child according to their path. Educate the newcomer, which is like a child, according to their new path. So if you're a convert and you're growing in your Judaism, I'm sure you had to live a very high level standard to become a convert, but maybe even in that, okay, so you went through a year or two's process of learning, and now you're going to say, what, now you're a Torah scholar? I don't think so. Now you're a PhD in Judaism? I don't think so. But you're growing. Good. That's all we're asking you for. Grow in your Judaism. Precisely. Take it slow. One step at a time, one shoelace at a time, one pant at a time, one skirt at a time, one keep at a time, one tzitzis at a time. A little bit of modesty, a little bit of divine awareness, a little bit of dignity. You understand? Slowly moving your way into things. All right. I want to conclude with my most exciting little piece in this whole conversation of ours, without going into it at length. There is a great scholar. His name was Moshe Feinstein. Moshe Feinstein was one of the greatest halachic authorities in Judaism in the last 100 years here in America. He passed away in 86. And he has a large section of questions in Jewish law. And one of the questions came to him in the early 1950s regarding clothing. Dear Rabbi Feinstein, there are many Jews that are coming from Europe, and they want to know if they can dress like the Americans, which are very similar to the Europeans before the war. Or are we following the way of the Gentile? Question mark. Dear Rabbi, great question you ask me. And the answer is as follows. Who dictates what is Gentile clothing? And he says, in a very, very real way of defining this, he says, if clothing is worn by religionists of idolatry, ovdei kachavim umazalot, they service other idols, other religions, and they have a certain type of clothing, that type of clothing is prohibited for the Jew to wear. So if the Christians wear these long black robes with velvet collars and white strips in the middle, biblically prohibited. Bechukoseim lo selechu. Don't go in the way of those other religions. A monk's robe, prohibited. Keep going. A burqa of a Muslim, prohibited. Keep going. Pick the religion, find the idolatry for Judaism at least. You can't dress like that. But he says, in a very humorous way almost, who's to decide that the Gentiles are not wearing our clothing? Who decided that a pair of jeans and a t-shirt is goyish, is gentilic? Who said that? Maybe it's humanistic. Maybe it's a way for all common people to dress, Jew and Gentile alike. In fact, maybe we've been around before all these people. Mr. Levi Strauss, thank you very much. Levi Strauss, the first maker of jeans, was a good old Jew boy. Yes, yes. Thank you very much. Yes, give us an applaud. Thank you. We're the first to make jeans. And then the world went and made jeans. I'm not saying Levi Strauss was a Hasid from Williamsburg, but so maybe, it says Rav Moshe, maybe they're wearing our clothing. In other words, Rav Moshe is playing it down. He's saying, yes, surely there are those who dress a certain cultural way. Surely there are those Jews who dress very strictly looking Jewish. But are we going to say that the clothing of the masses is a prohibited clothing because we look like them? Why? Maybe they look like us. And it's a type of argument that like a 10th grader would make. It's a type of argument that like college debater would make. But like a great Torah scholar speaking like this, the way he draws the line clearly between what is prohibited clothing and what is common clothing. And therefore he concludes and he says, there is no prohibition in Jewish law for people to dress like that. So bringing this all together for a circle, Jewish law is very clear what is supposed to be worn and how. Whether it's a sheitel or a yarmulke or a tzitzis or payas or a beard or our shoes or shoelaces, or whether it's Shabbos clothing or Yom Tov clothing or dressing for divine awareness or dressing for respect or right over left. There's a lot of things that the Code of Jewish Law collectively states about how we dress. And there's no question about it that tradition has its way of influencing culture in Judaism. There's no question about it that Jewish law and tradition correlate one with another. But to say that jeans and a t-shirt is prohibited, no such thing. In fact, I will tell you, and the reason why I love teaching this class is because how many thousands of Jews throughout the world, and it's entirely in spirit of this 1950s letter from Moshe Feinstein. How many Jews wear jeans and t-shirts and brown shoes and have yarmulkes bigger than your baseball cap and have payas and beards and they wear their tzitzis to their ankles and they walk proudly as Jews? Are they Torah scholars? Maybe. Mostly not the greatest Torah scholars, mostly not the greatest rabbis. They're definitely not living in Williamsburg, but everywhere outside of Williamsburg and Bnei Brak. Thousands and thousands of Jews less like this. The blue-collar Jew could even be a majority of religious Judaism versus the white-collar Jew. And it's critical that we understand that there's no question about it according to Jewish law. They have their place. Not a doubt. The only question is, then why are there so many thousands of Jews also dressing much more modest, much more with a higher level of decorum? As in military terms, the blues versus the OCPs, the suit versus the camouflage. And the answer is because that became the decorum. School systems in Europe, school systems in America, school systems in the Hasidic world, in the Lithuanian world, in other yeshiva worlds, created this decorum because they hoped that it would bring a higher level of divine awareness It would be a separation between us and the world, and that would help dignify and solidify and strengthen the Jewish community. And it does. In many ways, it does. When you wear that black hat and you wear that black suit and you wear that black robe and you put on that white shirt, you're dressing to impress yourself, the world, and your Yetzer Hara. I am a Jew and I live like a pious Jew. Look at my clothing. Don't you see? I'm wearing the uniform. It says Yankees. It doesn't say Dodgers. You understand? This is who I am. I am a woman. I dress modestly. This is who I am, Yetzer Hara, evil inclination. And this is what I represent. Now, you decide what's right for you. Are you the black and white or are you the jeans and the t-shirt? You find somewhere your space in that spectrum of Judaism. Just remember one thing and ask yourself this always. Varamahent or not Varamahent? Do I have warm hands? Is my Judaism exuding itself? That when I meet someone on the street or I engage someone in life, they could say, wow, this Jew, I want to be like that. Or do you walk out on the street and you're just like them? And then when you want to somehow show up as different, there's nothing to show for it. Not inside, not outside. So every time you look at your hand, you say, Vada hand or no Vada hand? Do I have warm hands or don't I have warm hands? Right? Am I showing up with divine awareness or don't I show up with divine awareness? Is it bogeyed? Is it tricking me, the clothing? Or is it beged? Like the Gemara says, Mani mechabdusi. My clothing, they are my honor. Does your clothing honor you? Does it bring you to a better place? Or does your clothing dishonor you? Does it bring you to a less spiritual place? And we'll leave it at that. I believe my tenure here is over. Maybe one day we'll regroup. But my 4 weeks that I was requested by the rabbinate of the academy has closed. If you want to be in touch with me, I'll share with you my links. I wrote a few books. I don't know if any of you could benefit from them. They're very off the mark kind of books, very specialty niches, but I will send a link to Zoe to share with you. I'm working on 3 more. This is not a sales pitch. This is simply a way that maybe they could benefit from you. And I want to wish you a lot of success. And I want to welcome you to the fold. And I just want to remind you all one thing, and I say this from the bottom of my heart. In my congregation, I have converts, numerous, and I have non-Jews also, because we welcome everyone. I've had black, brown, purple, yellow, and in between. I don't care. I'm an American-born, 7th generation New Yorker, and I love everyone, unless they try to hurt me. Then I don't love you, or anyone else for that matter. And we really want to respect everyone. I just want to say this. And like I tell you, varamahent, warm hands or not. One more thing. In every single chumash printed, give or take, there is a commentary on the left side. You know the name of the commentary? The commentary's name is Onkelos. 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 He is one of the #1 commentaries in Jewish tradition. He was a convert. I want to tell you one more thing. You ready for this? The Jews at Sinai were converts. Before Sinai, we were all Hebrews, destined to become the Jewish people. We weren't the Jewish people until we converted at Sinai. And like I always say, you know who Abraham's father was? Terach. You know who Terach was? An idol worshiper. You know who the first convert was? The first Jew was a convert. Never, ever forget that. I love you. I wish you all tremendous respect. I wish you all lots of good luck and blessing in everything you do. God bless you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Take care. Have a great night.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Rabbi, thank you so much.